This is The Toss-Up, where an expert-line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports, from some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention. It's all right here on The Toss-Up. The IU softball team has been on a roller coaster ride of a season. Indiana got off to a flaming hot start to begin the year, powering through February undefeated and rattling off 14 straight wins. The Hoosiers set program records, took down ranked opponents, and even earned a number beside their name for themselves. But now here we are at the end of April, and conference play has not been friendly to the Cream and Crimson. IU has been swept by a Big Ten opponent 3 times in just over a month. They did complete a home sweep of Michigan State, but then followed that up by losing 8 of their next 11. So, where do they go from here? Since their 14-0 start, the Hoosiers have lost more games than they've won. This is not the same team we saw a couple of short months ago. Well, or is it? Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Toss-Up. I'm your host, Drew Fry, and I'm joined this week by a panel of softball experts. We have Jordan Gould and Will Trubshaw from IUS TV, and Jared Kelly, the IDS softball reporter as well. Thank you all for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
So we're going to start off the show here talking about that beginning of the season. Obviously, that 14-0 start. Is this team that good, or did they just get lucky?
You know, I do think that this team is pretty good. They've hit some strides, some slumps in the Big Ten, because last year it was a total flip-flop of this year. They started off so poorly, right? And this year they rattled off those 14 straight wins, like you said. And really, they beat LSU, which is number 7 in the RPI rankings right now. Georgia, who was really high early on, they're still 31, still ahead of IU. And, they've played USF, South Florida, who was at 25 in the RPI, and they've won all 3 of those games. So they've beaten some quality opponents that was just honestly keeping them, relevant still, despite their poor play in conference play. But I don't know. I think that this is legit, and then it's just the offense hasn't woken up for quite some time, and they're running out of time is the problem.
Well, I think Jordan hit it right on the head. I mean, this team, they are capable of having double-digit run outbursts, and they had a series a couple weekends ago against Maryland. They had 2 run rule victories in that series. Those were those 2 victories. So this is a team that when the offense is clicking, they're borderline unstoppable. Again, you saw them beat LSU and Georgia. LSU, a legitimate contender for the national championship this year. The thing is, the offense has kind of gone cold of late, and there's nothing you can do about that right now. The Hoosiers, they're fortunate that their 14-0 start put them in the position they're in. They kind of just have to weather the storm, though. That's the main thing. But it's definitely not a fluke.
Yeah, you talk about their offense, and coming into the season, we knew that they were definitely going to be a small ball team, right? They steal a lot of bases. They have almost twice the amount of stolen bases as anybody else in the Big Ten right now, and we knew they were going to have a powerful offense, right? They have a bunch of underclassmen as well, very balanced lineup. But with that, it was going to be a lot on their pitching staff, namely senior Tara Trainer and junior Emily Gooden, to carry the team. And I think we've seen in conference play. The fatigue has definitely got to them as the innings have racked up, and the offense has to start supplying runs soon.
And so, yeah, you touched on it a little bit, but from that 14-0 start, what has changed this season, and what can the Hoosiers do to fix it back?
Yeah, well, I think the beginning of the season, I think they overachieved a little bit, right? They had a lot of sophomores, like I talked about before, in their lineup, and they were just clicking on all cylinders in their 14-0 start, right? And in conference play, I think a lot of the teams got to see them. They're playing 3-game series against the same team, and in non-conference play, you're playing a team once or twice, right, in a weekend. So I think that's definitely a big difference maker too.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Hoosiers, it might sound a little simplistic, but they need to get on base, because when they're on base, that's when they're doing the most damage. They set their program record this year for steals in the season. It's just a trademark of a Shauna Stanton offense, is they're running the bases. But when they do that, it causes havoc for the other team's defense. I mean, you look at the LSU game, LSU was lost out there on the field. They had no idea what was going on because IU was making them make mistakes. And when their offense is at their best, that's when they're winning games, and that when they're stealing bases.
Yeah, their speed is keeping them, alive in a lot of these games. Jared, you mentioned that they're almost double the amount of stolen bases as everyone else in the Big Ten. They're up 60 stolen bases on the next most, which is Nebraska with 68. So they got 128 as a team. That's ridiculous. And they have these swings on their shoes, which Coach really kind of loves. Sean Destan does, and for certain marks, 10, 15, 20, they get different color swings. So it's kind of a stipend, or almost like a reward for stealing more bases. But yeah, I mean, that's kept them in a lot of games. And really, I look back at that Purdue doubleheader a couple weekends back at home where Tara Traynor was out there just dealing, but IU couldn't get a hit. And it took them until I think like the 5th or 6th inning to finally scratch a run. And they got on by an error, and then they like small ball, they steal them over, bunt them, and an error by the defense scores a couple runs, and they win that game, I think 3-2. So, yeah, I mean, they're really relying on small ball, and the pitching's been there. It's consistent all year long. Tara Traynor's been as consistent as they come. 200 strikeouts this season, ridiculous stuff. But the offense just has not been consistent, and that's been the thing that's haunted and killed them this year.
And you mentioned Tara Traynor, a staple of the Big Ten, and the speed just dominating the Big Ten. But overall, throughout the record, from what you've seen of this team, where do you think they stand in the conference realistically? Where should they be?
Yeah, I mean, they're 6-11 right now in conference play. I think they're like at the 8 or 9 line right now. With, of course, they host the Big Ten tournament here in 2 weeks, I believe, so it's really coming up soon. But, you look at what they've done against conference play. They've gone 0-9 on the road against Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State. All these teams are ahead of them in RPI. You cannot do that if you want to advance to the postseason, and especially regional. We're talking tournament play here. The non-conference is what's keeping them afloat, like we've already mentioned a couple times. But, I mean, can't go 0-9 on the road against these teams. And they even played Northwestern, but that wasn't a Big Ten game, but Northwestern even handled them as well. So they've just struggled against the teams at the top of the Big Ten, and that's what's killed them. And I don't know if they're going to be able to get around that later in this year.
Yeah, in terms of where they stand in the conference, I really do think this team has the talent and had the talent to be a top 6 team in the conference. Obviously, that's not where things stand right now. And it's been a lot of what we talked about. It's just the offense has been super inconsistent. And now the pitching is kind of fatigued to the point that they're having a hard time keeping the team in the games. And yeah, again, like Jordan said, you can't be 0-9 on the road in conference. Last year they had 5 sweeps in conference. They only have 1 this year. Unrealistic to expect that would happen again, but you need a few more wins than what they've gotten, and it's just the way the cards have fallen this year.
Yeah, they've definitely been dealt one of the tougher schedules, I would say. They played Northwestern, they played Michigan, they played Ohio State. Really the only top-tier team in the Big Ten they haven't played this year would be Illinois and
Minnesota, maybe.
Minnesota, yeah. So, and then obviously they have Penn State and Rutgers coming up this weekend. But, they've beaten the teams that they should have beaten in Maryland, Michigan State, obviously. They split Purdue. But, the next 2 series against Rutgers and Penn State are must-wins, and that's definitely going to be telling come a postseason time.
Yeah, especially in my mind, you got to come up with sweeps against Purdue and teams in the lower conference. You can't take 2 of 3 from Maryland. You got to sweep them. And especially with Penn State coming up, they're like 160 or something like that in RPI. And those wins, even if they sweep them, won't help them. It only hurt them if they lose. Same to Rutgers, who is coming on hot of late. So really, they got to win out. And then they got to do some damage in the tournament just to have a chance. I mean, they're at the 44 line in the RPI right now. 42 teams get in, one of which is Missouri, but they're on probation, so they're not going to make it. So there's a spot for IU. So, they're on the border right now of tournament, making it, not making it. So it's just a matter of them getting the job done, winning the games they're supposed to in their conference.
So winning those games that they're supposed to, what is the key for the Hoosiers to do it? If you have to name one strength that this team can really build off of, I'll go to you, Jared. What is the biggest strength for Indiana?
It's really been what's carried them most of the year is small ball, right? They're a team that likes to lay down a lot of bunts. Obviously, we know they like to steal a lot of bases. And, having these, obviously you have very good pitchers in Tara and Emily Gooden. But, they can't shoulder the load. It's not going to be 1-0 games every game. So the offense has to really go out there and produce and give them some run support because right now, they're just getting shut out and they're just looking very, underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, going off that, I think it will be largely the offense's job to get them back into this. Because again, it's been the pitching all year has actually been one of their more consistent things. I think something that'll be helpful is what Coach Stanton always talks about. It's this line mentality. It's this one person gets hit, and the next person gets going. And when you see that a lot too with this offense. When they get the bats rolling, they're unstoppable. That's when they get those run rule victories. No one can catch them because they get this confidence throughout the entire lineup, 1 through 9, that yes, we can hit the ball, we can get on base, and we can score these runs, and they just pound teams to death. But when they don't do that, and we've seen that a few too many times this season, the wheels kind of fall off, and it doesn't matter how good the pitching is, the offense just can't contribute. So for me, the biggest thing is, can they get 1 through 9 going?
Yeah, they're fourth to last in the Big Ten in batting average at 276, and while that might be good for Major League Baseball, I mean, just in college softball, baseball, I mean, that's not going to cut it. You really got to perform better. I mean, over 300 is what most of these teams are doing. So, you got to get players like T.T. Hart, who's got the wheels. Paige Shitwin comes off the bench for him and runs. Taylor Lambert is a regular in the lineup, and she runs a lot. And Gabby Jenkins, too. You got to get those 4 on, really. Get them to second, and then have Westmoreland or Radcliffe, someone to drive them in. And that's kind of, they haven't been able to execute that in recent times is what's killed them. But if they can just play fundamental baseball, right? Get them on, get them over, drive them in. That's what they got to do. And we'll see. They got 6 games left, and then the tournament to see if they can figure out how to, fine tune around that, clean it up a bit.
So it sounds like the key here is going to be consistent offense, and we've seen some incredible pitching this year. Obviously, Tara Trainer, who we've talked about. We can dive in a little more. Where would this team be without Tara Trainer? Jordan, what do you think?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I mean, she is just phenomenal. She was drafted 21st overall by the Aussie Peppers. I mean, it's pretty amazing to get drafted in softball. I mean, I remember Shonda Stan was just absolutely praising her. She was like, I don't know, do we get the team together for this? Because, you don't want that disappointment if she doesn't get drafted, right? But she got drafted. She heard her name called, and well-deserving. 3 players from the Big Ten were selected. I don't know. I can't imagine this team without her. It's going to be tough next year. You got Emily Gooden, who's a junior. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But, Tara Trainer is the ace. She's the workhorse on this team. I mean, she has a crazy amount of innings compared to everyone else. And the strikeouts just come and come and come. But, on a day that she doesn't have it, who are you going to rely on, right? And there's some options, but they're very slim. So, really, it's up to Tara Trainer to really keep IU in ball games because the offense hasn't been there this year.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan really hit it on the head. Tara Trainer has 22 of the Hoosiers' 31 wins this year. She is quite literally the workhorse. She's second all-time in program history for strikeouts. She's one of the best. And we've seen, too, what can happen. There was a game just this past week. She gave up 13 walks. Hoosiers got blown out up in Wisconsin. They need her on at all times. She is the biggest catalyst for this offense. Or I'm sorry, for this team.
Maybe she can hit too, though.
They could use as much help with the bats as possible.
Yeah.
But when she's going, the rest of the team is going. Everyone on that team looks up to her. She's a good leader on the team in addition to being a good pitcher. So I think it's a completely different story without Tara Trainer on the team this year.
Yeah, if I had to pick one game that defines Tara Trainer, just over her entire career or just this season alone, it would be that Mercer game where they went into, I think it was 10 or 11 innings. She came in relief, 7 innings pitched in relief. I think she struck out 16 batters. That is the type of player that Tara Trainer can be. And, down the stretch of late, she, like you've said, she's definitely had some control issues. The strikeout numbers aren't there like they have been. But to your question, Drew, this team would definitely not be have 30 wins right now without her. They would probably be in the lower tier of the Big Ten. So definitely Tara Trainer. It's going to be a big blow to lose her next year, but they're going to definitely rely on her down the stretch now.
Yeah, and that Mercer game, that was a time they were undefeated, right? I mean, the stakes were high, keeping the win streak alive, and she just came in and did her thing. That was awesome. I don't know, if playoff LeBron were a softball pitcher, it'd be Tara Trainer. That's what I'm going to say.
That's amazing.
I'm going to give her that compliment.
I love it. You cannot talk enough great things about Tara Trainer, but we've already had our fair share now. We are going to toss it to a break after that. So stick with us because coming up after the break, our panel will continue discussing IU softball. Stay right there. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. We're talking IU softball. Now, before we cover the team's NCAA hopes, we're going to toss it over to Meredith Struing at the media wall. Meredith, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Drew. Senior Tara Trainer may be the most heard of player on the IU softball team, but her star status is heightened with the supporting cast that's behind her, a fact that can't be overlooked. You've got sophomore catcher Maddie Westmoreland, who last year earned first team All Big Ten honors, led the team with 10 home runs, and had the second most runs batted in for a single season in program history with 52. This year, she has a .324 batting average. She secured 3 doubles against Michigan State, and she slammed 2 home runs during the battle with Michigan. Then there's junior Gabby Jenkins, whose quick feet stole 3 bases in a single game against St. Francis back in March, and who batted a .400 against number 6 ranked Georgia during the Hoosiers' early winning streak. Oh yeah, and she's only had 2 fielding errors in the 49 games she's played in this season. The star-studded performances just keep multiplying with infielder Grayson Radcliffe. She helped her teammates when she posted 5 assists at Wisconsin and boasts a total of 154 catches for the year. During February's game versus St. John's, it was junior Katie Lacefield who nabbed 4 POs, 1 RBI, 6 catches, and an .833 fielding percentage. For IU softball, each athlete, whether they're a slugger, a speedster, or a scorer, plays their part to near perfection. Drew, back to you.
Thanks, Meredith. All right, now we talked about the pitching staff before the break, and now here's a number I want to start you off with. Tara Trainer and Emily Gooden, the 2 top pitchers for IU softball, have combined for over 80% of innings pitched for Indiana this season. So I got to ask, once we get into the tournament time, what happens if either of them is unavailable? What do you do? Jordan?
Drew, I'm surprised that number isn't higher, honestly, than 80%, because I don't know, when it's not Gooden or Trainer, it's been Natalie Ford occasionally. Josie Wood's been really nice. I mean, ERA under 2. I mean, I'd say Josie Wood's probably the 3rd best pitcher on this team this year, but Natalie Ford's got so much promise, too, as a freshman. So those are really the 4 pitchers on this team. I mean, Taylor Asklund made 1 appearance, but really it's been those 4 players from time to time, and really it's been Trainer and Gooden at the top. But I don't know, I'd say Josie Woods, maybe lean on her if Gooden or Trainer isn't available.
You know, I would have to say, if we were talking to Coach Stanton right now, she would probably say that that's not going to be an issue because most of the time Trainer and Gooden are going to be out there regardless. If it were an issue, though, I do tend to agree. I think we would see Josie Wood out there a little bit more just because she hasn't been used a whole lot this season. Her arm's still relatively fresh. But I really do like Natalie Ford. I mean, even Taylor Asklund. See, she's someone who made her first career appearance earlier this year. She hasn't really pitched a lot yet. She's a true freshman herself, like Natalie Ford. But from what we saw, the 1 inning she pitched, she looked really good, very sharp. So if they really need to scrape the barrel, that's where you look to. But I think for the most part, Shauna Stanton's going to stick to the 4 that she has used, primarily Tara Trainer and Emily Gooden. And if need be, she'll go to Josie Wood and Natalie Ford.
Yeah, this late in the season, right, it's going to be kind of hard to throw a freshman kind of into the fire like that. So to ask a lot out of Natalie Ford, especially come Big Ten tournament time, is a lot. So you're pretty much looking at Josie Wood as the third girl out. So, but we've seen in the past, right? Emily Gooden will start a game, Tara Trainer will relieve her. Emily Gooden will come back and relieve Tara Trainer again. So that's definitely something that will probably happen, unless an injury occurs, right? But most likely we're going to see these pitchers just piggyback off each other for the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's a great point because it's at this point in the season with the stakes as high as they are, it's going to be really hard to see. I just can't really imagine her bringing in like Taylor Asklund, you mentioned, Will, or maybe or Natalie Ford, maybe for an inning. She might, but it just seems so slim. It's just, even if Trainer goes 6 and then you throw in Gooden for a 3rd or an inning and maybe the game's tied, you keep going, I would guess that Trainer would come back out there.
Yeah, that's really, Coach Stanton is really set in her ways. When you have a pitcher like Tara Trainer, it's hard not to use her as much as you can. But I really do think we are, especially come playoff time, it's just going to be a lot more of Trainer and Gooden just because you can swap them out like that, and those have been the 2 all year for Coach Stanton.
Yeah, and now if one of those were to go down or start struggling, I guess at that point it becomes the burden on the offense. You got to rely on them. So your go-to bat in the lineup, Jared, I'm going to kick it over to you. Who is the best bat that Indiana softball has?
Oh, right now it's got to be Maddie Westmoreland, in my opinion. She's going up there every single time. She's either driving a ball to the fence or she's hitting it over the fence. Obviously, last year she was an All Big Ten player. This year she started off a little bit slow, and she's definitely kicking into high gear now, which is definitely good to see. And she's always batting in that 3-4 spot in the lineup as well. And she's just one of those players that you can always expect to either produce a good at bat or just get on base, which is definitely something Indiana needs.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to have to go with Grayson Radcliffe, the transfer this year from Marshall, Coach Stanton's old school. She's been remarkable this year. She's got 7 homers on the year. She's contributed in so many ways. She's kind of become one of the faces of this team in one season, not even a full year completed here at IU. She's really fun to watch. She's energetic out there, and she's a catalyst for this offense.
Honestly, if this were Family Feud, both of those would be on the board, honestly. Those are both really good answers. I don't know. It's like so close for me. Taylor Lambert's really consistent. Mm-hmm. And another player who just is kind of slept on, I guess you can say, Gabby Jenkins. She was really great last year. She's, I think, leading the team in hits this year, 46 hits right now. So, with her, both of them have great speed. Lambert in center, and then I just lost her name. Gabby Jenkins in right field. With them right there, they're just really good out there next to each other, and they really fit together well in the lineup, and they can run like we've seen them run all year.
And so now, as we approach this, I know you talked about consistency is what's going to really keep this team together. What does the team need to do, last steps in these final 6 games coming up, if they want to get that NCAA tournament bid?
They got to show that their offense can get some runs for Tara Traynor and Emily Gooden when they're out there, because they just, quite frankly, they haven't done so. They did so against Michigan State, but so what? Michigan State's at the bottom of the RPI. That's not going to do anything. That's not going to impress the committee. They really got to score runs, and they got to pound Penn State and Rutgers. More so, I think Rutgers would help, but like I said earlier, losses to them won't. It'll hurt them, but wins won't hurt them, but losses will hurt them more. Just because that these teams are just not very good. So the offense, they got to score runs and they got to be consistent. That's the key.
Yeah, this is definitely a team that, as it stands right now, they're kind of on the outside looking in. So for me, again, I agree. The big key is they're going to need to win out the regular season here, and they're going to have to make a very deep Big Ten tournament run, if not take the whole thing, if they want to get in. There's a lot that's got to go right their way. It's entirely possible, like we've been talking about all show. The offense is there. They've got the talent. They've done it before, and the pitching, as long as it stays solid enough, they can do it. But they've got to win. I really think they've got to win out. I think they've got to do extremely well in the Big Ten tournament, and then they've got to wait for some other teams too around the country, not just in the Big Ten. But you look at like a Georgia down in the SEC and other teams around the country. They've got to win their tournaments. They have to have all the teams that are expected to win their conference tournaments win those conference tournaments.
I would argue against that. Just in you were saying that they kind of need to run the table in order to get into the tournament. I would say right now the resume, they have 2 top 10 wins on the resume, Georgia and LSU obviously, and Rutgers and Penn State aren't going to really add anything to the resume. I think if they can get 1 or 2 wins against maybe a Michigan or take back an Ohio State loss or something like that, I think definitely that can help them. I think they don't need to entirely win the Big Ten tournament, but they definitely need to make a run there.
Yeah, Georgia slipped all the way down from, I think, top 10 where they were when IU played them, all the way down to 31. So I don't know if the committee will look at that or maybe where Georgia was at the time that they played them. But, when we talked to Shonda Sin maybe a week or 2 ago, she talked about, them on the road versus at home, and someone, I think, asked her the question about the Big Ten tournament being at home, and they're at home, so, there's a chance they'll play really well, right? It's a perfect setting for them. They got the tournament, the eyes will be on Andy Moore Field, and, IU will have a chance to really show the Big Ten and the selection committee what they're about, so we'll see.
All right, so now we're going to kick it into a lightning round right here. I'm going to start off with you, Jordan. If this team doesn't make the NCAA tournament this season, is it a disappointment? Is it below expectations? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know how you could say it's not, especially starting 14-0, the best record in program history. I don't see, I think it is, yeah. You got to make the tournament starting that hot, and it's almost like don't want to waste Tara Traynor's historical year and the pitching staff as a whole. So, yeah, I think it'd be a disappointment.
I don't think it's a disappointment because this team was not expected to start the season 14-0. Quite frankly, they weren't necessarily expected to contend in the Big Ten. Obviously, that hasn't been the case this year, and everyone thought last year maybe that was a fluke how well they did in the Big Ten. You remember they finished 26-30 last year. They're 30-plus wins this year. It's a team that's consistently on the rise, and they're still young. There's still a lot of pieces there. Again, when you have someone like Tara Traynor, it's always a shame if a season like that gets wasted. But to me, I don't think it's a disappointment. I think they've still exceeded expectations, and there's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well, right? They came in, like you said, not expected to do anything. And for the most part, if they go into the conference tournament and they win it, then great. But I think as it is now, the goal has already been met.
All right, now we're going to keep the lightning round going. If they do make the NCAA tournament, what kind of ceiling does this team have? What is about the peak realistic expectation?
Obviously it's going to be tough to win a regional. They're going to go in as maybe a 3 seed in that regional, so I think it's going to be very tough, but if they can get a win or two, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think at most this team could probably get a win or two in that first round. Not too much more, though. I think, again, the youth is not an advantage there for them, so 1 or 2 wins will be the ceiling.
Yeah, if they play a Big Ten team, I'd say they're in trouble. If they play an SEC team, I'll give them a chance, just judging on how the way the season's gone.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so we're going to wrap it up with one final segment here. We are calling it Put It on the Record. I want you to make your final prediction, one definitive statement. Jordan, I'll start with you. When does IU softball season end?
Okay, it ends. It's going to end in 2 weeks in the softball tournament. I don't think they're going to win it all, but I think that they'll win a couple games. But I say the road ends there.
Will?
My prediction is that the softball team will finish this year in the Big Ten tournament conference semifinals.
What do you think,
I
Jordan?
would also agree with that. I think they depending on how the bracket shakes out, I think they definitely have a shot at that semifinal. And depending on the wins they get and the matchups they get, I think they could really find a way to get on the bubble and get in that tournament.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Thank you all for being here. Great show today. That does it for this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. So toss it up, find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.